Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Magicians. Another great episode. I love what they did with the whole Alice side of things in this story. Just how they handle, like, there's so many different directions. Like, for one, the fact of the matter is her family situation, kind of going back to her parents. And it's kind of like, oh, thanks for showing up and telling us, even though you've been alive for a while, you just haven't said diddly squat to us. We had to find out because Quentin told us the moment it happened. I always love the dynamic between her and her parent, just because it's just kind of like, obviously she has the biggest problem with her mom because her mom's kind of, I don't know what it really is. Like, her mom has her own issues. But I love, like, they did so many interesting things with her parents. Like, in one particular case, it's like showing you, kind of like elaborating more on just how much the world without magic is for everyone. Because for them, basically their entire lives had fallen apart because they relied so heavily. Every facet of their life was based around magic that basically they haven't paid taxes on their house in like 30 years. One of the people that they knew, Carol, she used like illusionary magic to make herself look thinner. Now she's drinking a lot. Stephanie's drinking a lot because of all this, on top of like, oh, my daughter hasn't talked to me. It's like, well, the fact of the matter is she only has one of her children around. And then again, you know, it's like, well, Stephanie's got that whole situation where she's just kind of, I mean, even last season, she was kind of like, oh yeah, finally admitting like, oh, what? It's that I was kind of a bad mom, that I didn't really understand her. And, you know, that maybe in some shape or form that kind of makes her resent Alice a little bit more, just because like, oh, you didn't come and tell us that you were alive. Like, I know I'm not the best mom, but I'm still your mom. You didn't come to tell me, you're your dad. Like, so how super messed up that is, you know? But at the same time, with that element, there's also the element of like, because the episode almost had this like horror element to it, because it's like, oh, you're trapped in a house with this monster that bounces from body to body. I also appreciate the fact is, it's like, well, you have to basically, the whole thing is like taping themselves up because it can slip in through any basically open spots, like in skin and stuff like that. So that's where you have to cover yourself up, hence how it got to Quentin in the first place. But nevertheless, I thought that was kind of interesting. I wish they kind of would have played with that a little bit more, but I guess it kind of played into the episode to a certain extent they did, because it's like, oh, who's infected, who's not, did it leave, did it not? I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I thought it did such a good job too, picking the perfect host. The person it chose was Daniel, because it's like, well, out of anyone, that's the person that Alice has the best relationship with. And it's like, well, I could have easily went inside your mom, because apparently Lamprey's whole situation is it gets inside of you. It basically lays eggs. Those eggs basically get inside your brain, and then you die, and then it devours your body. That's how the Lamprey works. But it's like, I'd rather leave your mom alive because I know how much you two hate each other, and that would be the ultimate kind of middle finger, essentially. Because what I also like about this whole situation, and I'm kind of tying it all together, is the fact is Alice never admitted to anyone. Like, anytime there's conversation come up of like, why is the Lamprey after you? It's like, she wouldn't answer it. She was just like, well, it's complicated. And then eventually she opens up. Like, she's like, well, the fact of the matter is what she did. She not only killed the Lamprey's children, but she experimented on them to kind of understand their magic, to understand, like, them, to gain knowledge from it, is like her main reason. And it's like, wow, that's super messed up, because it's like, oh, as a Niffin, all she cared about was knowledge. Then we end up finding out later on, it's like, that's not even the case at all. She killed them and experimented and tortured them because she wanted to see the light from them. Like, the fact is that when they died, there would be a light that comes from. She just wanted to see that. That's why she did what she did. Also pointing out the fact is, and this is stuff we knew ahead of time because of Friar Joseph from last season kind of brought that up in the season finale, of just like, well, it wasn't just him. Like, she's done it to a lot of people, even she's admitted. So just who she was as a Niffin. It wasn't all about, oh, because she made the promise like, oh, I just going to do beautiful magic. I'm not going to hurt anyone. What did she do? And that state, no matter what the case may be, that was all lies and manipulations to get free. But it's like, in that state, all you care about is doing whatever you want to do, being free. Maybe on some level she was at one point cared about knowledge, because of who Alice is. But maybe when she was set free, that bit of the bit of Alice that was her, that cared about knowledge and stuff like that, disappeared, and all she cared about was destruction and mayhem. It was also interesting because we actually get to see what the Lamprey actually looks like. It isn't like a person. It is like I wonder, is it always in that state or like whatever in that magical realm? I guess that's what it always looks like. Because in my head, when they said the lamprey, I was like, oh, it's an actual person. But it's like, no, it's like a parasitic insect, you know. And we see it at the end when Alice ends up killing it. Then the light kind of comes from it. You see her kind of smile a little bit, but you almost see her pull it back because she catches herself like, oh my god, I'm being too happy about what's wrong with me. But the point I was making is like, because of the whole situation, the way things played out, Daniel ultimately ended up dying anyway because he had a weak heart, and she was electrocuting him to try and get the lamprey out of him. Well, eventually successfully got it out of him, but it now leaves her, the only person left in the family is her and her mom, which they hate each other. So in the end, the lamprey kind of got its revenge anyway, because immediately they were talking about its plan was to kind of lay all these eggs and stuff like that. My brain was like, well, no, it wants to torture you. Like, that's why it didn't go out of its way and just outright kill Alice when it had a chance, because it's like, it wants to torture her and everything. So I also thought it was kind of interesting that, like, Stephanie was crying, you know, about how the fact that she couldn't use, like, magic is gone and she doesn't know what to do with herself. And she immediately started making out with Quentin, which is like, that's already a sore spot for Alice anyway because of the whole, like, Elliot and Margot situation back in season 1. So that probably just makes her, reminds her of that, but also just because she dislikes her mom. But this just means there's going to be an even bigger strain on the relationship. With her dad in the, like, picture, things were bearable, but now things are not going to be good at all because it's like now Stephanie's going to outright blame Alice because technically all this is her fault for doing what she did. And you can see Alice see the like hate in her mom's eyes with the whole situation, and Alice is going to feel guilty because the lamprey was even like, oh yeah, your dad won't survive this, but she's like, maybe you could make the argument it's like because she was so intent on her revenge. You can make the argument is like, well, was it for other people? Was this revenge simply for herself of like, oh, if I don't stop you now, you're just going to keep coming after me and trying to torture me, so I have to kill you now no matter what the cost, And because it's all beautifully ties into like the whole aspect of like, this is not the same Alice. Like subsequently coming back, she tried to be the same Alice. Maybe she left Quentin's sake to protect him from the lamprey. Maybe she did it simply just to get away, just because, like she said, life wasn't what it was once before. Quentin still has feelings for her, but she isn't the same Alice Quinn that she was, and there is no going back from her. Like, the fact of the matter is, she's so confused. Like I brought up earlier, that moment of like, oh, you see a little bit of the Nif in Alice come out when you see her looking and almost smiling and enjoying the light from the lamprey, but then at the same time, it's like, you see her almost pull it back because she doesn't know, and it's quite sad. Interesting thing too is I was under the impression because of the article they used, because they changed it, because initially when Friar Joseph would talk about it, it sounded like it was like the lamprey, making it seem like there was only one, that's why I thought it was a person and everything. But now every subsequent time it's like, what did you piss off? I pissed off a lamprey. They used a, so meaning there are multiple lampreys. Just, I guess Friar Joseph was just talking about the lamprey, because it's like, well, specifically which one I'm talking about is coming after you. So this is one problem that's, dealt with in a certain extent. So that's good. That's just one silver lining you can pull away from this like terrible situation. But that doesn't mean Alice is out of the woods, because she will probably always have to look over her shoulders, because a lot of people will probably know like, oh, Alice is weak now, like all I got to do is track her down. Like, we don't know who else, what other creatures she messed with, because like everything she messed with as a Niffin most likely were magical creatures that don't need the wellspring, that don't like have internal magic they can use on their own, so it just kind of sucks because the Quinn family's got tragedy after tragedy. Like I said, ultimately in a way, the lamprey did ultimately get its revenge on her by basically kind of destroying everything for her. So, and also making her finally admit what she wasn't willing to admit, I think, not only to Quentin and her parents, but also to herself. Like, I think that was kind of the point too, to make her see the kind of, the lamprey being the monster and everything, but it's like, no, the real monster is you, So I think that was just kind of beautifully done in the episode. The other side of things, obviously in Fillory, you had the whole situation with the pirates. Which was kind of interesting. Like, you got to meet their king, who's a lady, but she's like, I'm the boss, so I get to decide like whatever I get called. It's like, oh, and also that little flirtation between her and Margot, because Elliot, his ship got overrun by pirates and everything like that, and it turned into that weird situation of like, oh man, like the reason this is happening is because the pirate's boat basically sensed out Elliot's boat, because it's almost like a situation of like, I smear the pheromones in the air type of thing, and it's like, okay, our boat won't leave until our boat has sex with your boat. It's like, wait, what? And then, like, you know, you have like Tick kind of explain it's like, yeah, it kind of walks away. Like the boats are usually never the same after this particular situation, so it's kind of like, oh yeah, they kind of have to be like forever docked. And it's like, wait, that sounds like PTSD. It's like kind of like, hey, it's like, so are you saying like basically? And it's super messed up. It's like, technically our boat gets raped. So, and that's the only way we can get around this situation, make sure that everyone comes away from this alive and everything. It's like, that sucks. Especially because I was wondering about that, because they went out of their way to bring that up earlier in the season. Like the fact, well, was that last episode? Was it the episode before last? The whole aspect about the fact is that the boat has a conscience of its own, that it is almost like a person. But even Margot was like, you don't have to do anything you don't want to. At the end of the day, I'm going to just talk to you. Like, cause you are a person, you do care, you do feel. So at the end of the day, what do you want to do? And I am curious to see what their boat would have done. But the queen acted, which kind of took me by surprise. Cause I was like, oh, why is she doing that? Is that out of the kindness of her heart? Which she ended up collecting their teeth. Basically, it was meant to be like a big metaphor, not necessarily a metaphor, but an example for her to see it. It's like, oh, you made this decision. That the fact of the matter is, your words, you made a ruly decision. Now I want you to take that and apply to your people. If they don't do what you say to do, I want you to take this and remember this bloodbath. That basically, I killed all these people, and if your people don't get in line, I will kill them too. So basically, you have a repeat of this situation. So it's meant to be a lesson, but I think at the same time, she was kind of impressed that Margot stood up. And I guess as as a kind of mystical creature herself, I guess she respected that, like that Margot treated the boat with respect. But it was more so than anything, it is the aspect of like, it was a lesson, I think. I don't know. The queen is very complex. It seems like we still, like I said, don't know what her ultimate goal is. She's making all this stuff happen, as like having mushrooms grown or whatever. Like I said, it does seem like they are trying to take over Fillory, but to what extent? Once again, my brain is still kind of like, well, putting Frey in the throne, and Frey being on a throne because she's actually the true heir to the throne. If she really is Elliot and Finn's daughter, would allow the queen to kind of, and especially because she is like the queen's, like, most, one of her servants and subjects. So it's kind of like, okay, I'll whisper in your ear and tell you what to do, and you kind of enact it as king/queen of Fillory, so. But what's also kind of like a Banff moment was the fact is that Margot wouldn't give up Tick for being the one who stole the eye and everything. And rather than giving it back to the queen, she squished it, which there is no going back from that. Like, I guess because of the enchantment that the fairy queen used to break her eye take her eye like that, to kind of keep it intact and everything, must mean that there's no way to kind of repair it after it's broken. That, or just either that, or she's talking about the fact is that so magic's not around anymore, because she doesn't know that they're secretly planning to try and bring magic back. So because of that, it's like there is no way to get your eye back. You kind of officially screwed yourself over, which I guess it's a situation where it's like Tick is thanking her and everything, and she's like, shut up, Tick. That was a hard thing to do, because it's just like, that was her eye, and basically it's almost like the queen is winning, because she's like, you actually think that was the only way. I always know what you're up to, so. Which, we didn't even ever get to find out what was up with, like, Elliot and Finn and Frey's situation, because the only one that was left behind was the map maker. He was pretending to be the king. But like the last time we saw, Elliot opened a doorway inside of the ship because a keyhole magically popped up. For whatever reason, maybe it's connected to the second key, which we haven't dived into at all, but Quentin unlocked the next chapter, but he got possessed by the Lamprey, so that conversation hasn't come up yet. So, and then obviously another side of the episode was the whole situation with Penny. It's actually super sad. Like, it does seem like slowly but surely things are kind of getting better between Katie and Julia, especially because Julia is helping out. But the reason why Katie's struggling so hard is also mainly because she cares about Penny. But she gives the reason of like, well, the fact is Penny got sick like this, helping out with the whole finding a way to try and kill Reynard situation. So the least she can do is, is help out because she wouldn't be able to forgive herself if like Penny died because of that. They ended up summoning this demon Astaroth, played by the actor who's I've seen him in a lot of things, but I guess like one thing most people might know him best from, he played Death in the show Supernatural, kind of OG Death within the confines of the show. What I mean by that is because Death is kind of back in a different form, which is kind of a spoiler for the more recent season, but I'm not going into that. But like the original actor who played him up till like what, season 10, I think, was the final season that Death looked the way like he did. But nevertheless, he plays a demon named Astaroth, and not the Astaroth with an E, not an A, because A is his cousin. And basically, he pulls out the poison, the cancer inside of Penny. And I also thought it was kind of a neat thing of like Penny, to kind of get away from the pain, does an astral projection, and he's like, "Hey," Astaroth was like, "Hey, bro, no judgments here, man. You do what you got to do, man." And then it's like, oh, he saved Penny. But then it's like, oh, actually, Penny's dead because they didn't get him in time, which we didn't see Penny's kind of dare like, wait, what? Oh, so it seems like maybe because at the time Penny was in the middle of his astral projection that it ended up like, his consciousness is kind of locked away into like that in-between world, or maybe that was just his powers kind of being a means of trying to protect himself. Also, another thing I didn't even think about because of the whole aspect of Penny's abilities and everything, didn't even think about the fact is that he can't hear, like his telepathic abilities, his telepathic magic doesn't work, because it's once again that situation of like, I don't know, like I guess because like prior to this I didn't even think about it, because I guess like because I never thought about, oh yeah, because his abilities as a traveler come from him, it doesn't stem from magic from like the wellspring and stuff. But I guess like his telepathic abilities do. But I felt like that came with his whole thing. So why? I don't know. I thought those two kind of went hand in hand, his telepathic abilities and being a traveler. But it's like no, and now I'm like no, because like being the telepath that he is kind of goes along with his magic. It's just kind of like what kind of magic user he is along with that. So it's like, I guess it kind of makes sense. But I feel like with a telepathic ability, especially when he can't really shut off, I guess it's one of those things where it's like, well, there's an on and off switch, and because of just how it is, because magic is always a thing, it's out there, it's always constantly in the air, it's just kind of like a flip the switch and it just always stays on. So I guess that's just how the power works, that even now it's on, but because there's no magic to kind of circulate things, it won't work. Which makes you wonder, the fact is that when they used to spell, maybe that kind of activated his ability. Also, because he could also still do astral projection, so maybe there was enough magic in the air from when they were summoning the demon that he pulled from that. I don't know. Or maybe, like I said, not unless it's just kind of a self-defense situation with his body that he's stuck in between worlds. It's just kind of interesting because he's dead, but he's like, bam, he's in that form. Because no one's been like that when it came to being dead. I don't think that's come up yet, like someone being like that when dead. So I don't know, like I said, maybe it's just his mind separate from his body. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. But also an interesting thing that kind of popped up from this episode is Julia's getting ingredients in it, whatever, and this lady stops her and her eyes go white, and she's like, the fact of the matter is you haven't seen the signs yet. It's like, what are you talking about? I guess we're just going to push you a little harder. And then like it seemed like it was just nothing. But I guess like it has to deal with the fact is that Julia still has her magic. So I don't know what that's necessarily tied to. Maybe this kind of has to deal with the 7 keys in some shape or form. Like, what signs were they talking about Julia? Like I said, maybe it might even have to stem with the fact is of who she is or what she is, the reason she can still use magic and whatnot. Maybe it has something to do with that. Like, whatever, whoever it is, someone is calling out to her and they're going to try and push her more. In what extent? I don't know what that means. It seems like a situation of like, oh, we're going to send a lot more trouble your way. We're going to make things a lot harder for you so that you can finally like awaken. Because it seems, because as we can see, like Julia can't do a lot of magic, but I guess, she can do a little bit, but not much. I guess the thing is like, once again, like she has the potential to do more because of whatever she is. Like I said, we still haven't dived into it in the show. But whatever she is allows her to do magic, so it's like there's probably a larger reserve of magic within her she just can't tap into yet. And whoever they are, whether they're connected to her parents. I mean, we might even find out a weird situation that maybe on some level. I mean, I'm curious. Like, I mean, John's the only demigod we've met in the show. It's like maybe on some level Julia's. Like, I don't know. Maybe she's not even just a demigod. Maybe she's actually a god. But I get the feeling like it might be more of like a demigod type of situation. But it's like, would John be affected by it? Because gods don't pull upon the wellspring for magic. So if John was still alive, or just this applies to any demigod, because they are half god, does that mean their magic doesn't derive from the same thing? So would they be kind of classified as a whole mystical creature thing too? I don't know. I guess it really depends on what level of god you are. Are you like Ember and Umber level of god? Or are you part of like the old gods? Because the old gods are probably not affected by it, but like I would assume like gods on the same level as Umber and Ember wouldn't be either. So I don't know. I doubt she's a god. Like, you know, like I said, I've kind of gotten spoiled about like what she is. At least when it comes to like the book, I don't know if the show's going to necessarily go about that. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's like that definitely ties into possibly like who this group might be. They might be people very similar to Julia that want to kind of bring her into the fold. But like I said, we will just have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good